thou that sleepest, arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
We once were, we are no longer a Christian nation, at least not just. We are also a Jewish nation, a Muslim nation, and a Buddhist nation, and a Hindu nation, and a nation of non-believers.
Don't you love diversity? I think we have an identity crisis, Mr. Anderson.
I think so.
Yeah, what do we identify as? Wow. By the way, those that forget history are destined to repeat it. You're about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call Radio. We're not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, or do either of us hold a doctorate degree in anything? Not that that would make any difference, of course, our opinion. We only ask that you personally and or corporately not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they are facts, although they might very well be just that, facts. But again, our opinion. You're not required to listen to, act on, or repeat anything that you hear today, nor assume that they are facts, and that any information we present is by no means meant to harm or threaten anyone. If you listen to the news media at all, and you can't help it, there's two sides. You have one side, and it's extremes, that'll tell you that conservatives, Donald Trump, everything they do, they disagree with, and they chastise you. On the other hand, you have Fox News, and conservatives, Trump can't do anything wrong, and they chastise those that disagree. Interesting. I think it's very interesting.
Yes. It's also interesting that Elon's ready to start another party.
Yeah. And it's that's not necessarily a bad idea, but in terms of how things work now, that might be a bad idea. It's dividing once again the conservative ranks.
Whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, again, we have an identity crisis, right?
We do.
What's it like to be an American?
Like the former president announced at the beginning of our show.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we? What are we? Oh, my goodness.
We unite in our diversity. What an interesting statement. We're united in our diversity. Folks, we're gonna take you on a little trip this morning, back to the future, where we were talking this morning, pre-show, and some of us were in July 4th parades. It was hot here in Ohio, by the way. I was wringing wet when I got done, but it's all for a good cause. And a lot of people in the parade, a lot of people standing by, which is good. But do we really know? Do we really know what we're talking about when we talk about America? Are we really no longer a Christian nation? Should we no longer be a Christian nation? It would be hard to prove right now that we are a Christian nation. I'm sorry. Very hard to prove that. Again, we're going to remind you of where we are today. By the way, and I'll let Martin get here on this. Betsy Ross did not design the original U.S. flag.
What?
Yeah, the first U.S. national flag featured the Union Jack, and
Oh, yeah.
there are now 27 official versions of the American flag. 27. The original Star Spangled Banner does still exist, at least a good portion of it. And what else we got here?
We got a new one.
yeah. Let's see that new one. This is proposed new one. This is 51 states. If you add Puerto Rico in there. And for our conspiracy theorist, hold your ears. The U.S. flag on the moon are probably white now due to UV radiation and unfiltered sunlight. Probably bleached them. And Mr. Anderson showed you the 51st state. Martin, why don't you pop in here? You were talking about the flag. You were in a parade yesterday, weren't you?
Hey, thanks for having me, BJ. And yes, I did. I got to walk in the Centerville, Ohio Americana parade, which attracts over 80,000 people to this festival. And I was noticing as I left the parade route and started back up to my vehicle, the looks, and a child, I would probably say 11, 12 years old little girl, she didn't really know what that flag meant. She didn't know. And I said, well, this was Betsy Ross's work. And her mom knew and was trying to prod the young girl on and talking about the colonies. And the mother was probably my age, maybe a little bit younger. And I was just amazed, BJ, at what my heart dropped. What the kids don't know about our American history. That's what I thought myself.
Yeah. What does July 4th mean, really? Again, we have an identity crisis. And how soon before we get a rainbow flag?
It's amazing that you bring that up, BJ, because at that same festival, I met a middle-aged woman. Her name was Mary, sweet woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I'm honored, sir, to walk next to you as I was approaching my car. This was a different situation. And she said, do you think that the founding fathers of what you're representing would be happy with the way our country is right now? And I thought about it for a minute, BJ, and I had to say no. And what we ended up speaking about was just one topic, and that was the murdering of children inside the most sanctified place that a child can be, and that's the mother's womb.
Right.
I said these men and women would have never even crossed their minds of happening, let alone legislated to where it can actually happen and no one gets any repercussion for it.
Amen. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. We've got a couple of videos to show you this morning. I think the first one is kind of going to be where we're at. And then the second video we're going to play is where we should be at, where we're coming from. And I have tasks for you, by the way, before I forget about this. And I expect our listeners to start being conversation mediators. I told you about where the news media is, the drive-by news media. They chastise those that believe, well, Trump can't do anything right. They chastise those that disagree. And Fox, on the other hand, is Trump can't do anything wrong and chastise those that disagree. Folks, here's your task for next week's program. We want you to start being conversation mediators. I want you to contact your senator and your congressman, the office, and ask them for the 10 best things in the beautiful bill. The 10 best things, the 10 reasons that they voted. It's a huge bill. Maybe you only get 5, but ask for 10. And I'll tell you what to do with that next week. But again, contact your senator, contact your congressman, each, and ask them for 10 reasons why they voted for the big, beautiful bill. Or maybe, hopefully not, but maybe 2 reasons why they didn't vote, or 10 reasons why they didn't vote for the big, beautiful bill. And I'll tell you what to do with that information. But you got to collect it. You have to do something this week. And let's see what happens. Is Congress working this week? I don't know. Maybe we'll find that out.
I think they're celebrating.
Are they?
I don't know.
Taking a deep breath?
Probably.
But we have to do that as soon as we can. We have to do that. And I'll tell you what to do with that. I'll tell you why I'm asking that. I think you already know why you would ask your congressman or senator that. I really do. Number one, you're out there and they know it. And number two, you care and they know it. And they're watching. They're watching. You're listening to Last Call, Christian Talk Radio with a sting, where you can see the difference. Do radio. Why don't you play that Dobson tape, Mr. Anderson, or video, and let's start with that, where we are.
On to Family
B.J.
Talk.
Edwards again.
It's a ministry of the James Dobson Family Institute, supported by listeners just like you. I'm Dr. James Dobson, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Family Talk, the broadcast ministry of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute. I'm Roger Marsh, and I'm joined in studio by Gary Bauer, our Senior Vice President of Public Policy here at the James Dobson Policy Center. Gary, it's always great to have you, and especially great to have you with us today.
Well, same here, Roger. I really enjoyed the opportunities we have to do some of these shows and to both express how much we care about this great country and, of course, Dr. Dobson's ministry. And this is, I think, a particularly important show for people to hear.
Absolutely. On today's program, we are going to turn the spotlight on the celebration of the birth of our great nation. We're going to hear a special presentation from Dr. Dobson titled, I Believe in American Patriotism. And Gary, I know this is Dr. Dobson. It was actually written back in 2010, but as you hear Dr. read this, you're going to hear how relevant it is even today. Walks through the bedrock values that make America great and highlights the key ways that the country unfortunately, has abandoned those ideals in many ways. So I hope you'll listen intently to today's broadcast. We've titled it, I Believe in American Patriotism, on today's edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
I am an American. After God, my highest loyalty is to this country. I believe America cannot remain one nation unless it is under God. America is no accident. From the beginning, it was intended by the author of liberty to fulfill a special role. We couldn't have gone from 13 disparate colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast to the world's last remaining superpower in little more than 220 years without the guiding hand of Providence. Along with the Founding Fathers, I believe religion is the foundation of liberty, morality, and representative government. The First Amendment was meant to protect religion from government and not the reverse. The so-called separation of church and state, words found nowhere in the Constitution and which would have confounded its drafters, is used not to separate church and state, but affect the divorce between government and Judeo-Christian values. I believe in the United States Constitution and the system of government it established, one of limited powers, inalienable rights, a balance of power, and ordered liberty. I believe that the Constitution can only be amended as specified therein, and never by judicial whim. I believe you don't have to be dean of a law school or a Supreme Court justice to understand the Constitution. Just someone who has a sense of history, is logical, and understands that words have objective meaning. I believe in a judiciary that interprets law, not one that makes law. Judges who distort the Constitution's plain meaning to achieve their own ends, have substituted their will for that of the voters and the founders. They are enemies of the Constitution and the people, and should be impeached and removed from office. I believe in the right to keep and bear arms as guaranteed in the Second Amendment, and which is based on the right to life and the right to defend one's life, family, and property. Private ownership of guns is the protector of hearth and home and the guarantor of liberty. I believe in the right to life from conception to natural death. It is the duty of the state to protect innocent human life. Legalized abortion, state-sanctioned killing, is the beginning of the unraveling of the social order, which soon leads to euthanasia, infanticide, and the rationing of medical services. It is an affront to the law of God and jeopardizes the rights of all. I believe in the free market system as both the most efficient way to provide for human needs and the only economic system compatible with human rights and dignity. The free market is as American as the Constitution. It has brought unparalleled prosperity to this nation and opportunity to its citizens. Today, government is trying to kill that system to achieve utopian ends, like spreading the wealth. Advocates of the omni-state detest capitalism for its impartiality. In place of a system which rewards hard work, ingenuity, and risk-taking, it wants rewards based on political power, payoffs, and favoritism. I believe in limited taxation to pay for the constitutional functions of government. As government takes more and more of an individual's income through taxation and regulation and inflation, it robs him of his time, his labor, and ultimately his life, turning citizens into subjects. What we have today isn't taxation as envisioned by the founders, but plunder or serfdom. I believe the rich have as much right to their property as the rest of us. A system that penalizes the most productive among us retards economic growth and is a denial of equal treatment on which this nation was founded. If left unchecked, I believe the national debt and mega deficits will demolish the economy and lead to a catastrophe on the order of the Great Depression. The national debt is like a runaway train barreling down a track, picking up speed as it goes, hurtling toward a precipice at the end of the line. For the 60 years before 2008, federal revenue averaged 17.9% of the gross domestic product, and spending averaged 19.6%. We're now spending 25% of the gross national product and collecting about 15%. It used to be said that we owed it to ourselves. Now we owe a large part of it to the Chinese and the Saudis, who will one day make demands that endanger our national security. Eventually, even Washington's ability to borrow will reach its limits. Then it will inflate the currency to the point where our economy, built on debt, comes crashing down. Say hello to Germany, 1921 to 1923. I celebrate America's heroes, history, and heritage. I believe America has been the greatest force for good in the world for more than 2 centuries. Ask the penniless immigrants whose descendants achieved success in every field. Ask the Belgians, the people of Normandy, the Filipinos, the South Koreans, and even the Japanese and Germans, whose cities and industry we rebuilt after World War II. Ask those liberated from Dachau and Buchenwald, who shed tears on the uniforms of American soldiers who saved them. A denial of American exceptionalism is based on ignorance, indoctrination, or malice. I believe we need to begin teaching patriotism again. For decades, Hollywood, the news media, public education, and academia have been enemy territory. Elitists have indoctrinated generations to blame America first. This needs to be countered by a concerted effort to teach the young what America really means and why love of this country is thoroughly justified. I believe political correctness is killing our country. National security, law enforcement, and social stability are now subordinate to group sensitivity and spurious claims to equality. I believe in the America of individual liberty, patriotism, and honor. I believe in the America of George Washington and John Adams, of Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln, of Teddy Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, and Ronald Reagan. I honor the brave men who fought to defend America as well as those who fight today. From Concord to Yorktown, from Gettysburg to San Juan Hill, from the Argonne to the Bulge, from the Chosin Reservoir to the Tet Offensive, from Kuwait to Kabul. Politicians talk about freedom. Columnists write about it. Members of our armed forces bleed and die to defend it. I stand with the Pilgrims, the Puritans, and the pioneers, the earliest settlers on these shores, and the intrepid Americans who pushed west, settling this vast continent, with the farmers and ranchers and merchants and mechanics, the workers, entrepreneurs, and inventors. America is a monument to their perseverance and vision. I believe a nation that cannot defend its borders has surrendered its sovereignty. Immigration issues should be decided by the American people based on the national interest, not by political elites and activist judges, based on expediency, a misguided altruism, multicultural fantasies, or a sense of guilt. The Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," not to give me your criminal class, your moochers, and those who refuse to assimilate, all of them here illegally. I am outraged by driver's licenses and in-state tuition for illegal aliens. This isn't compassion, but a slap in the face to hard-working, law-abiding Americans, including the immigrants who came here legally. I believe America's language is English, along with our common ideals. It's the glue that holds together a diverse people. From the Mayflower Compact to the Declaration of Independence, from Washington's farewell address to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, from the Constitution to the latest congressional enactment, America's story has been written and spoken in English. I reject anything that detracts from the primacy of our mother tongue. I believe American identity is based on belief, not blood, heart and head, not race, religion, or ethnicity. An American is identified by what he believes, not the happenstance of birth. Everyone who believes what Americans have always believed, everyone who fights for America is an American, regardless of how he worships, where he was born, or the color of his skin. In the words of Shakespeare's Henry V, quote, "For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother." I believe we need to stop dividing Americans along the line of race and ethnicity and start uniting them. The more the nation is polarized as us versus them, the less likely we are to hang together in times of trouble. Multiculturalism and racial identity politics teach minorities that they are members of a race, ethnicity, or community first and Americans second, if at all. We need an electorate which will vote not as Latinos, blacks, workers, retirees, businessmen, etc., but as Americans for America. I believe that ultimately American security rests on the family. Families keep America strong. The family is the incubator of civic virtue. Those who undermine the family, including marriage, subverts America.
Amen. Amen. Hey, 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 hey. That's not there to scare you. That's there to motivate you. 4 words come to mind when I was watching this. Not on my watch. Not on our watch, folks. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. You know, let's note some obvious things here, okay? The gentleman, the president, my humble opinion, okay? The president spoke first on our program about the status of our nation, the Muslim gentleman. Speaking of Muslim gentlemen, in the sovereign state of New York, a Muslim disguising himself as a communist. To get elected, he has to disguise himself as a communist. Is about to be the next mayor of New York. And again, earlier on, another Muslim declared that America was no longer a Christian nation. Can I educate you this morning? Okay. We want to motivate you this morning. We want to equip you throughout this program. We're at 250 in terms of a nation, 250 years officially. And it's said that nations die 150, maybe 250 years into their existence. Not on my watch. Not America. This is the greatest nation that has ever existed on planet Earth. The poor in this nation live like king and queens compared to other countries, in spite of what you're hearing in the news media. That's why they're trying by the millions to get into this nation. A nation founded on Christian principles, which we're gonna learn very shortly. Very shortly. I'm gonna let, if any of the panelists want to come in and make some comments before we play our foundational video, you're welcome to come on board and fire away. Just unmute yourself and we'll let you in. Hey, Norm. Hey, JC. JC, go ahead, please.
Well, I tell you what, I was sitting here listening to the last part of that. So I was out in the bay and I come back in. I thought, well, I'll go in and listen to a little bit of it because I really wasn't too excited about listening to Mr. James Dobson. This crap just makes me want to puke.
I get it. It's
They lay
motivating.
it all out. Now, Dobson's living a nice lifestyle. So are all the rest of the big name pastors in America. They're doing nothing. Oh, they're good to put out a 20-minute video. Let's make a video and it'll look like we're raising the banner. You know what I mean? We're sounding the trumpet. They ain't doing nothing. But we sit around here. It's the one guy was in my car lot the other day, yesterday, and he had been here before in the garage for church in the garage. And he was here one time, and the one time he was here is when the preacher was going to go to prison. He was amazed. He's like, oh, he wanted air. He wanted me to tighten a bolt on the front of his bicycle. His wheels about ready to fall off. Well, it just happened that his wheel was going to fall off right here in front of my car lot. So he comes in, we start in a conversation. Yeah, he said, and he asked about Pastor Bill, if he got out. And I said, yeah. So we got talking about things, and I just was kind of slapping him around a little bit about what are we doing? Well, we're off on the bike path, riding our bicycles up and down the beautiful little bike path they make for us to keep us distracted. And, you know, he agreed with me on stuff. He said, well, you know, how did he say this? He said something about basically he was just wishing and waiting and hoping. And I just jumped on him. And his wife's out there outside in the heat waiting on him. You know, and I'm like, he just left out of here. And I'm like, there goes another Christian just going to ride his little bicycle. And somebody asked me yesterday, he said, you going back to the 4th of July fireworks? It's right here behind my car lot. In the park they built, there's $3 million they put into this place back here. It was an old gravel pit. So a lady puts $3 million in this place. They have all the food trucks back here. So they got bands. I don't know, there might be 5,000 people back there. What did I do? I went home. I tell people this. I said, listen, I'm not going back there and wave my little flag and believe that we have freedom. We have no freedom, people. It's just ridiculous.
Where the Spirit of the Lord, there you find liberty. Go ahead.
We're just gum-dipped. We're just comfortable with our little boats and our RV and our camper and our golf clubs and our fishing poles. And we just go about in our own little world. Norm's smiling. Norm's got something. That's all I got.
JC can say that because JC's a doer. Okay.
Right.
He knows what's it's like, well, how come you're not doing something? That's what he's saying. How come you're not doing something? Go ahead, Norm.
Hey, JR, one more thing. Last Saturday, I'm getting so disgusted with all this crap. Now, every week on Saturday, the Democrats are up there. Well, the God haters. Now, they're not even Democrats. They're just demonic God haters. So I go up there, and now they're running probably 100 people up there every Saturday, all 4 intersections of the square. So all I did was, because I can't go up there by myself. It's just, it ain't going to happen. Nobody wants to go up there and deal with this crap. So I just drove around. I left the doors open here on my car lot. I just jumped in my car, ran up 4 blocks up to the square, drove around the square, and they know me. As soon as they see my car with the JC's Autos Club in front, they know me. I just went around to each little group, 4 groups around the square, and I just hollered out one thing to them. And here's what I said. Trump is your daddy. And I went to the next group, and then I just left. I got out of there. Just probably made their day. It was fun.
Norm, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm hoping that JC will open up one day and tell us how he really feels about stuff.
Yeah, we're working on that. And by the way, JC, you are going to contact your senator and you are going to contact your representative, right? And ask them the 10 things. Big, beautiful bill. Huh?
I'll do it. But you know what? Bernie's not even answering back to me now. He was in the beginning when he first got elected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck with getting a response from you senators and congressmen. So, but anyway, I want to make a comment about New York. New York put a curse on themselves a few years ago. I don't know if you recall or not, but they put a demonic, a demon on the side of the Empire State Building. And they had it all lit up. And then sometimes later, they built I don't know, it was probably a 20 or 25 foot tall statue of Baal. And they had made the decision that they were going to worship Baal. And I just think they put a curse on themselves. And I think they're just, of course, we don't know if he's going to be the mayor or not, but it sure does look like it.
Yep.
And I think they're just reaping what they've sown.
I get it. Martin, hop in there, brother.
Sure. Once again, as everybody on this panel will know, the Bible is clear how to regain our righteousness. I believe it's in the Proverbs where it says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin causes the people to groan. Mm-hmm. I would say Christians, stand up, start living the word, doing the word as BJ's talking about, and at least in your local community, you'll see justice and righteousness prevail, because God will not kneel to evil. Evil kneels to God.
Yeah, you start locally. Thanks for the reminder. Right. Thanks for the reminder, Mr. Anderson. Let's take a break and then we'll do an intro for the video. And the video we're going to show is it's where we're coming from as a nation, folks. It's what the original intent was. It's what got us to where we are today. Instead of criticizing people that are smart or not smart and work their rear end off and become very successful, some of them billionaires, and then complain to them about making too much money, as people that aren't working at all, getting benefits for not working. Wow, where have we, from whence have we came? But it's where we're going to go. It's what we're going to do with this. And by 250 next July, we're going to have some improvements, folks, and we're going to be headed in the right direction. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk, about real life.
Many of you aren't watching this live, and that's okay, because we're going to recommend that the folks that are listening to this send it to anyone and everyone that needs to hear this message. And the message is not on my watch. Not now, not ever. And we're going to have to get over this worrying about offending somebody, because it's costing children's lives. I'm not just talking about what they call the preborn, what I'll call about the babies that already exist inside of a mother. I'm not talking about that, just that. I'm talking about what we're doing to children mentally and physically. What we're doing to families, the separation. Dobson mentions the family. Yes, key. First institution that God created for the benefit of the man. There are so many things that we take granted. Children don't believe that it's necessarily important that they have children. That careers are first. And then when the career comes full bloom, they look around and go, well, is that all there is? No. But you've been lied to. And those that know have a responsibility here. And that responsibility is not to worry about offending somebody, whether that be your neighbor, a family member, or a pastor, or a politician. They need to be convicted, folks. They should be assisting you. And that's part of the reason I want you to ask your representatives, why did they vote for the bill? Do your own research. Maybe they've already answered that. But find out, look at the bill, see what it offers, see what it doesn't offer. Be objective. But do your research. Where there is no vision, the people perish. What's our vision in America? Yeah, that's right, diversity. We want to focus on our differences and how we can all be different, how we can all just get along, and everything will be okay. No vision other than difference. And those differences are going to expand because that's what we're focusing on. We're telling people to be different. And last I saw, I thought this was the United States of America. That's how we got to where we got to, folks. And video we're going to show from the John Birch Society, who did a very good job, is just going to put some of those pieces together that maybe you've forgotten, or maybe that you need to hear today. Mr. Anderson, any comments before we go to the video? Yeah.
Well, no, I just wanted to clarify the Dobson video. Well, I put that together with a slideshow, but
good job.
I appreciated the comments that he made about the problems that he perceived. He didn't write that. A friend of his sent him a letter, that letter that he read, and that letter was sent 10 years ago. To me, I don't know. I guess I realized things, starting to realize some of those things at that time, 10 years ago. I was just kind of waking up 10, 15 years ago. And it seems like everything accelerated. It is accelerating. And we gotta put a stop to some things somewhere. So I agree with you. You know, we look at 250 year mark next July 4th and maintain our independence. Amen.
Yep.
We're appealing to God. I mean, as Martin said, we gotta turn our eyes back to the Lord.
Yep. To righteous.
There's no other hope for anybody anywhere in the world. Your only hope is Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen. So without further ado, let's get into this. I'm going to go into the lobby and watch this with this is BJ.
All right. I'll close out the show when the video ends.
All right, sir. Have a great weekend. July 4th.
God bless everyone.
July 5th and counting, folks.
The United States of America. Born in 1776, our country is the offspring of a religious-based heritage of liberty under law. Blessed with great natural resources and a pioneer people given to industry and moral discipline, our nation grew to be strong and prosperous and developed the finest governmental system ever devised by man. America soon became known as the refuge of the world's tired, hungry, and poor. Millions left everything in the old world to start over in a land that rewarded initiative and hard work and perseverance. The many millions who didn't come here found comfort and hope in knowing that indeed there was such a bastion of freedom and opportunity, a place where dreams could become reality. Today, our nation appears wealthier and more powerful than ever. New technologies have revolutionized our daily lives. Luxuries once enjoyed only by the rich are commonplace and very affordable. Home ownership is widespread, and our people have the expectation of continued economic growth and prosperity. Yet more and more people are coming to realize that they may prosper materially only for a time because their freedoms are diminishing. The sobering reality is that America has been led far from its praiseworthy beginnings. Our people and businesses groan under a heavy burden of economic, political, and social problems, which are the result of a widespread departure from the fundamental truths that made our nation great. If the United States of America is to endure, citizens far and wide must once again come to understand, embrace, and live by timeless concepts called Americanism.
You get it included for free. No fine print, no hoops to jump through, and yes, the solar
What made America great and set it apart from other lands? Was it natural resources? No, other lands are equally blessed. Was it the people? No, the people who built America came from elsewhere. Was it government planning and wisdom that spurred our nation to such heights? No again. It wasn't what government did that made America great. It was what government was prevented from doing that made the difference. What set America apart from other lands was freedom for the individual. Freedom to work, to produce, to succeed, and especially to keep the fruits of one's labors. America became great precisely because the stifling effect of too much government had been prevented. However, freedom in America was not totally unrestrained. Americans overwhelmingly chose to limit their actions with moral codes such as the Ten Commandments, personal morality, and limited government. It's a combination that characterized America and made it the envy of the world. When our founding fathers decided they'd had enough of British oppression, they broke away and declared independence. They stated as self-evident truth in the Declaration of Independence that men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. In other words, God gave man his rights, and that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in the very next sentence, the founders defined the proper role of government when they stated that to secure these rights, governments are instituted. This is the entire philosophical base of our nation. Here, the government cannot legitimately redistribute the wealth, assume power over the people's lives, and dominate man's existence with oppressive taxation, regulations, and controls. According to the founders, government was to be a negative force, which leaves people alone. Its sole function is to protect citizens from one another and from foreign governments, and especially from their own government itself. The founders did not create a government to be a positive force, to do things for people, to take from some, to give to others. They understood that when a government starts doing something for one citizen, it has to take from another to do so. And in the process, it gains control over both. Britain's rulers didn't accept the Declaration of Independence, so our forefathers had to fight a war to make it stick. By 1783, the war for independence had been won, and British forces were sent back across the sea. But the governmental system at that time was weak. It had no power to settle disputes between the states, nor the power to tax for proper needs, such as national defense. So in 1787, delegates from 12 of the 13 states met in Philadelphia to revise the system, and they produced an entirely new governmental structure known as the Constitution of the United States. Keeping faith with the thunderous assertions in the Declaration, the Constitution was written to govern the government, not the people, and not the states, each of which was a jealous guardian of its own sovereignty. The founders created a central government with strictly limited powers. This left the states free to compete with one another to be the best state, the one with the least amount of taxation and controls, one where citizens would want to build a business and raise a family. That spirit of competition produced excellence, as honest competition always does. It's important to note that the Constitution wasn't forced on the people. It was sent back to the states for ratification, and several of the Founding Fathers wrote essays explaining it in an effort to persuade fellow Americans to adopt this new system of government. Some of the essays written by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay were collected into a volume known as the Federalist Papers. Those essays provide valuable insights into the intent of the founders in establishing our government. Eventually, all 13 states ratified the Constitution, and then each ratified the first 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights, further tying the hands of the federal government. These amendments are indeed about rights, but it would have been better had the Bill of Rights been labeled the Bill of Limitations on Government. Why? Because it's vital to realize that the Bill of Rights never gave citizens any rights whatsoever. Its sole purpose was to safeguard God-given rights by limiting government power. The founders even insisted that Congress shall make no law about speech, religion, the press, assembly, the right to petition, the right to keep and bear arms, and so on. These amendments are directed squarely at the federal government, not the individual and not the states. They are like most of the 10 Commandments, which are essentially thou shalt nots. The Bill of Rights says Congress shall not, all the way up to the marvelous 10th Amendment, which says in effect, if we forgot anything, you can't do that either.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise. I know this is hard to hear, but it's important. The shooter who murdered my son.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates. So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, democracy ruled by a majority, republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these five, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common form of government today. Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few, and therefore oligarchy remains. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments, so they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law there can be no freedom. Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society. In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property, and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times. Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government. Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everyone freer. There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum where something rushes in to fill it. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. It's a temporary condition, and because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin, res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35-1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario in a republic. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35-1 to hang him, but the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous or he goes free. The rights of the government aren't subject to majority rule, but to the law. This is the essence of a republic. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." Alexander Hamilton agreed, and he stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." And John Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The founders had good reason to look upon democracy with contempt, because they knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable.
Tesla is finished. Computer screens and manifest itself. Announced they're going huge growth in this corner of the
produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. When government power grows, people freedom recedes. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet, and they went on the dole. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets, demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy, and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars. Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the gradual transition from limited government to the unlimited rule of an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite. Just as there is widespread confusion regarding political systems, there is similar confusion in the economic arena. All during the 20th century, Americans were led to believe that there was a great struggle going on between capitalism and the communist world. Undoubtedly, a struggle existed, but the real adversaries were rarely identified properly. No discussion about economic systems will make sense without first defining terms. And one of the most basic terms in economics is capital, whose definition is the means of production. To illustrate what capital is, let's consider a very simple economy. On the sands of a small island, a castaway has just washed ashore. He has no food and he's hungry. He searches the island, he finds no berries, coconuts, or anything edible. He goes back into the water and tries to catch fish with his bare hands, but he fails. So he goes back up on shore and he finds a bush. He breaks off a branch, he gnaws at one end to make a sharp tip. Back into the water he goes, and with his spear, he catches fish. His spear is capital. It's the means of production for catching fish. He gave up some of his time and some of his energy to produce something he could not eat, but something that would help him to produce something that he could eat. Capital, therefore, can be tools, machinery, and even a man's handmade spear to catch fish. Such being the case, consider that the communists in the former Soviet Union, as well as in China and Cuba, have always used tools and machinery. Officials there even view people as capital. Therefore, by strict definition, are not communists capitalists? For that matter, isn't everyone a capitalist? And so, is not every economic system a capitalist system? What then is the difference between what the communist system is and what the American capitalist system is supposed to be? The difference is ownership of the capital. Is the system monopolistic, state-controlled capitalism, or is it competitive, free enterprise capitalism? It is between these two opposing economic systems that a battle has always raged. Before we proceed, let's also define free market. Basically, it's a self-regulating system in which all parties are completely free to transact with one another. But where force, fraud, or injury damages one party, the government's role is only to punish those who commit such offenses and to vindicate the rights of the other party. This protects the integrity of the free market, or free enterprise system, without intervening in it. The term private property also needs clarification, for private ownership and control of property is a key component in the free enterprise system. In order for ownership of property to be full and complete, all four of its aspects must be met. These are title, control, use, and the ability to dispose of what a person owns. In a free market economy, these aspects are unrestrained, so long as the owner does not infringe on the legitimate rights and claims of others. True ownership of property and freedom go hand in hand. They always have. Now let's compare the two systems of capitalism. In the competitive free enterprise system, capital or property is both owned privately and controlled privately. In the monopolistic system, holding title to capital can be accomplished privately or by the state. But more importantly, capital is controlled by the state or by the elite few who control the state. The Communist Manifesto, which contains the basic program for all communists and all socialists, explicitly preaches the destruction and abolition of private property. Karl Marx understood the powers of controlling capital, and so have all communists and socialists who have ever looked and still look to Marx as their leader. State-controlled capitalism results in high prices and low quality. After all, why would a monopoly strive to improve if it has no competition? On the other hand, honest, thrifty, and hardworking producers throughout the world prefer a competitive free enterprise system for all. Here, low prices and high quality prevail because a variety of producers will seek to attract the widest amount of customers. Competition results in excellence and always has.
Hi there, it's Dr. Chad Walding.
There have been basically four forms of state-controlled economies, all on the far left of the economic spectrum: fascism, Nazism, socialism, and communism. In each, the government controls the capital. The difference among these is how much is owned or controlled outright by the government. In a fascist system, the government doesn't own businesses on paper, but it does control them. In Mussolini's Italy, even though he didn't hold title to businesses, he told the owners what to produce, how much to produce, when to produce, where to buy raw materials, who to hire, who to fire, and what price to charge. The rest, he said, was up to them. The fascist system is more efficient than other state-controlled systems insofar as those living under it think they still own their businesses. Shopkeepers concern themselves with maintenance on the machinery, employee relations, painting the building, and so forth, but the government controls owners through an array of taxation and regulations. Under Nazism, which means National Socialism, its proponents went one step further and acquired ownership of some corporations such as Volkswagen. However, Hitler didn't seize ownership of other industrial giants, he simply controlled them, just as Mussolini had controlled businesses in Italy. Socialism is where government officials acquire possession of major industries such as transportation, communications, and utilities in order to leverage control over the entire economy. Through ownership of these vital segments of industry and by creating government regulatory agencies, socialists gain control over virtually everything else. Finally, there is communism, the granddaddy of all in the economic sense. In a way, communism is more honest than fascism because all of the capital is owned and controlled by the state. There are no pretenses about it. Now let's combine political and economic systems, because ultimately one never exists without the other. We see again that there are only two ultimate choices: a competitive free enterprise system in a republic, or a monopolistic state control system under an oligarchy. A moral people have always been a vital element of America's strength. The Founding Fathers well understood the biblical teaching that righteousness exalteth a nation. They also knew that expecting a free market economy and limited government under a republic to endure without morality was expecting the impossible. James Madison cautioned that limited government alone was inadequate for our nation. And John Adams observed, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." George Washington stated, "Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle." Yet there are people today who think that liberty is license and that morality is unimportant or irrelevant to politics and economics. But as Benjamin Franklin added, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. The alternative to Americanism is what has condemned most of the human race to live as slaves throughout the millennia. It is the idea that rights are privileges dispensed by an oligarchy according to the unlimited rule of men, that the state should control or own the nation's capital with all economic activity directed from a central power, and that morality is inconsequential, and that security is preferred over freedom and opportunity. Our nation continues to be steered off course, and the principles that led to America's greatness are being cast aside. The simple question for us is, do we continue to slide away from our nation's founding principles, or do we return to the kind of government we inherited? Time is running out for Americans who sense that something is wrong. They have to decide what kind of a country we shall leave for future generations. All that is needed is for a sufficient number of Americans to get involved in the fight for freedom and to return our nation to less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.